welcome to a fresh new edition of Smart Money, your weekly show where we talk about all the top trending themes of the week and take up all of your queries. Now, with India overtaking Brazil to become the second largest country hit by COVID cases worldwide, what's top of mind right now is health, sanitation, safety and pharma. So that's exactly what we're going to discuss in the next half an hour with our guests. So here's what you'll get to see. Is healthcare the big growth story over the next 5 years? How do you capitalize on them? And let's try and make sense of some of the technical pharma jargon terms as we decode and demystify all of that for you. Lots more coming up in the next half an hour. And my guest today is Manish Sonthalia, the head of equities at Motilal Oswal Asset Management. Manish, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Now, this is a theme which has played out in a large way over the last 6 months, right? Ever since the COVID outbreak, some of these pharmaceutical stocks are up about 80, 90, even 100% from their March lows. But you're still betting on this theme over the next 5 years. Why is that?
Yeah, so Sonia, this pandemic has taught the world that healthcare and lifestyle structures have to be changed. You can't take your healthcare for sure because you have a new pandemic for which there is no yet cure available. So safety is better than cure, and from that point of view, your lifestyle structure, your lifestyle way of living, as well as your healthcare, all these three things will get greater impetus, will get a greater importance in household budgets than what was seen previously. Second point is that after 2014, growth rate in the pharma companies has been one of the lowest till now. And obviously all companies go through cycles, and I think the cycle which has begun for pharma will continue going into the future.
So, since this show is an investing classroom, so to speak, we do get a lot of queries, Manish, and one of the biggest query has been by a lot of youngsters who don't know how to understand the pharma sector, and they need a pharma 101. So what we're going to try and do is demystify some of the jargon, right? You have ANDA, US FDA, API and all of these terms. So my colleague Sonal Bhutra is here with the pharma handbook to decode and simplify the pharma jargon for you. And then, Manish, I'll ask you to tell us what are the most important things to watch out for. But first up, Sonal, over to you.
Well, let me try to simplify it for you. When a drug manufacturer wants to get approval for marketing a new drug in the US markets, they will file for an NDA or new drug application with the US FDA. NDA submission means that the drugs have already passed several stages of clinical trials and is safe for consumption. ANDA, on the other hand, is abbreviated new drug application, and it is for a generic drug, that is a medication created to be the same as an already marketed brand name drug. For example, paracetamol is a generic name. There are several companies that make this with brand names such as Panadol, Calpol, etc. Now, US FDA is authorized to perform factory inspection, and Form 483 is a form used by the FDA to document and communicate concerns discovered during these inspections. And there are three types of observations. First one, no action indicated. That is, no objectionable conditions or practices were found during the inspection. Next is voluntary action indicated, meaning objectionable conditions or practices were found during the inspection, but FDA is not prepared to take or recommend any administrative or regulatory action. And the third is the most severe one, that is official action indicated, where regulatory and administrative sanctions by FDA are indicated, and it increases the chances of a warning letter. Companies have to respond to this form in 15 days. However, Form 483 is not considered a final agency to determine whether any condition is in violation of FDA regulations or not. The FDA will consider this form along with a written report called Establishment Inspection Report, that is the EIR, and the company response as well, to determine what further action can be taken. After the Form 483 is issued and the inspector completes the EIR, the agency may issue an FDA warning letter, which indicates that higher FDA officials have reviewed the observations and that a serious violation may exist. The formal notification allows for voluntary and prompt corrective action. And if again this corrective action is not taken, there could be an import alert on the facility. That means they are banned by the US FDA for supplying drugs to the USA. Now to something that everyone is interested in, right? The API story. API is active pharmaceutical ingredient, which means the active ingredient which is contained in medicine. For example, an active ingredient to relieve pain is included in a painkiller. This is called API. API and raw materials are often confused due to the similar usage of two terms. But what is the difference? Raw material refers to chemical compounds that are used as a base to make an API. Well, lastly, about formulations is the process in which different chemicals, including the active ingredient, are mixed in specified ratio to produce a specific drug.
Okay, that was the ready reckoner for you in the pharmaceutical space, trying to demystify all that jargon. In fact, we have so many people writing into us. Let's welcome one guest on board. Saurav Shah, who's a viewer, joins in now with a query. Saurav, go ahead.
Selecting or picking up a stock from a pharma sector, what should be the basis of selection, like market cap, PE, or sales growth, or any recent research and development which is going on in a company, or apart from this?
Okay, a very simple question from him, Manish. Now that we've understood all the jargon, what is the basic criteria for stock selection in the pharmaceutical sector? Your advice?
See, the process of finding a stock in a sector, it remains the same. It remains the same even with the pharmaceutical company. Only the difference in the case of pharmaceutical company that it is a technical space in which there are certain names or jargons which are not well understood. So I think the most important thing to look at a pharmaceutical company, whether to include that in your portfolio or not, is to look at the total product pipeline of that portfolio and the period during which this product pipeline can be monetized. Just to give you an example, Copaxone, this was a multi-sclerosis drug which created huge news names, news wires, etc. It was hit. It was supposed to go off patent, but Copaxone was being readied by many generic manufacturers in India. So the first to file, first to get an approval, and first to actually bring the product to the market will reap the maximum benefit. So it depends on the product pipeline, it depends on when that product pipeline is coming to the market and how you are going to get the maximum benefit from it out of the prices.
Okay, well, I hope our viewer got that answer. You know, the other thing that we were discussing about earlier, Manish, was how do you identify non-index large caps or mid-cap pharma companies that will become mega caps? If you had to cite a couple of examples for us, what would be on your radar over the next 5 years? Which are the companies that could transition from mid-caps to mega caps?
See, we have bought one company called Ipca Labs. You know, when we had bought it, roughly, I think some 15-20 years ago, the market cap of that company was just about 100 crores. Today that market cap is many multiples of that. So what makes a company tick and what makes a pharma company grow? I think the basic thing to be noted is that the product innovation pipeline keeps on continuing and you try to specialize in a particular therapeutic area. You would be surprised to know that Zerodol is the topmost selling brand in the country. It's the topmost, #1 brand sales in India is Zerodol. And you know the company who manufactures it? It is Ipca Labs. And many people wouldn't know that. But the point is that year after year you continue to gain the momentum in the products which you have started to make. Hire managers who can go and sell these products to the physicians so as to prescribe them and allow them to sell the product. From that point of view, I think Alchem, Ipca, these are some of the names which previously in India were only restricted to the acute segment. Acute segment is that if you, let's say, have fever, I mean you take paracetamol, you take Crocin and you get all right. Sales stops. But if you move from an acute segment to a chronic segment, it means that or like say, let's say diabetes, it's a chronic segment. You have to take the medicines till you live. So obviously chronic medicines are more profitable than acute medicines, not too much, but the acute segment and the chronic segment, as far as India is concerned, is still growing. My sense is companies which are changing the profile of their mix of turnover away from acute into chronic, which Ipca is likely doing from 30% organic or chronic into 50% chronic will give them better profitability, better margins and better longevity of growth than what an acute company, a small company would be doing making in India. So from my point of view, I have liked two companies, Alchem and Ipca. Both of them were very small companies. They have continued to become big. In fact, both of them are trading at lifetime highs.
Yeah.
But there is a long way to go before these companies can be compared to the likes of, let's say, a Sun Pharma or Dr. Reddy's.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, companies that are in acute therapies like cough and cold are now transitioning into chronic therapies where there is a lot more revenue potential, if what I've understood correctly. So, Alchem Labs and Ipca are these two companies that you believe could move from the mid-cap, large-cap to mega-cap pharmaceutical companies. But, what kind of stock potential do you see here? Because these stocks have already run up, right? Over the next 5 years, what do the prospects look like?
I mean, you could wait for corrections to buy these stocks on a downtrend. Yes, the stocks, some of them are hitting all-time highs, but there is a long way to go based on the project pipelines which these companies have laid out. Let's take, for example, Alchem. Alchem has maybe a 65-70% segment coming from acute, but they have already started building a US business. And we know that US is the world's largest pharmaceutical market with $1.5 trillion worth of spending. They are making their front end, they are making the back end, they will have a $300 million turnover. If you are able to create this sort of a structure where your product gets manufactured in India at India costs and your products sell in the other parts of the world at their currency rates, or let's say in the case of US, in US dollar, there's a huge margin. The margins that we cannot even imagine earning all those sort of margins in India. And as a matter of fact, we all know that generic price medicines in the US are actually coming down. They have slightly halted, they have still stopped not coming down, but they are still slightly halted so as to earn them better margins, better product ROCE than what it was before.
All right, guys, so you just heard that stocks that can move to mega cap pharmaceutical companies are the likes of Alchem Laboratories and Ipca Laboratories. In fact, we have a lot of queries coming in, so let's try and take them. Abhishek Taware joins in. Abhishek, go ahead. What's your question?
Considering the recent developments that have been happening in the pharma industry, what would be the next big trigger that would keep the pharma rally in motion in the post-COVID era?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So COVID was one big trigger, Manish. What's the next big trigger for pharma?
So Sonia, the trigger has not yet ended. That is the first thing. We are still living in COVID, and it is so funny that now that we are hitting 1 lakh cases per day, the economy is opening up, and when we were 300 cases per day, our economy was totally locked. So now, until the vaccine or the medicine is found, COVID is a way of life. So in the pecking order of things, there's nothing that is going to change. Life continues to exist, but the perception of a human being who has either gone through a COVID treatment or not gone through a COVID treatment will have a bigger fear for his life, so as to not delay or procrastinate medications, diagnostics, tests which have been announced. Lifestyle changes, healthcare changes are now permanent with or without COVID. COVID, if they re-emerge, a bigger problem for everybody in the world. If it finds a solution, we are sure we'll find some new disease which needs to be dealt with.
Sure.
So I think from this aspect, since we are still living in a era of a fear of a COVID, it has now become a part of life, but there are still no cures, and the perception in the mind of the customer is actually going to change. His budget allocations from his homely budget allocations are going to change much in favor of the
medicines,
the
and
healthcare and the pharma companies, and everybody will benefit. It's diagnostics, it's doctors, it's hospitals. How much of a value chain gets taken by each of these components will depend on how the product evolves and how the disease pans out.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short commercial break, but many more wealth creating ideas lined up for you on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Smart Money coming back in just a bit. Welcome back. Thank you for watching Smart Money on CNBC TV 18. Our big theme this week is the pharma sector and the possibility of it becoming the big wealth creator in the next 5 years. We are in conversation with Manish Santhalia of Motilal Oswal. Manish, we were talking about how some of these mid-cap companies like Alkem and Ipca could potentially become mega caps before the break. But now let's talk about the large caps. Some of these stocks like Dr. Reddy's have already gone up 60-70% since March. What are the big companies and the big themes actually that you would be betting on over the next 5 years?
See, you would like to own companies which have seen a correction in the market from their highs. If you talk about, let's say, Sun Pharma, if I'm not mistaken, it is still 1/3 the price what the peak was, or that is even the case for, let's say, Lupin. Dr. Reddy's is the only large pharma company which has grown over the years except for these two. Of course, each of these companies have had their own share of problems. I think from the large pharma sector point of view, Sun Pharma has cleared matters with Department of Justice. They have settled things down. They have actually slightly differentiated strategy in the fact that they have allocated a portion of the capital, accrued capital from their earnings, into specialty formulations. This could be in the form of, let's say, psoriasis, which their brand name is Ilumya. You have competition product, but he is now one of the competitors. You have a dry eye disease which is called Sequa. There are many competitors, but he is also now become one of the competitors. And if you become or are able to grab a share of the specialty pipeline, that moat or that brand name or that Crocin brand name is synonymous with, let's say, fever, it becomes something like that. It gets attached to that particular disease, and there is no alternative but to buy these products. So this is the case with, let's say, Sun Pharma, who is focusing on specialty products.
Okay.
In India, for the last decade, we know Sun Pharma is the top company that is selling the company. It has a 10% market share. If not 10%, maybe anywhere between 8 and 10%. That is the sort of market share it enjoys in India, and effortless. And this money is only keeping to grow even if they just maintain their market share. Because the pharmaceutical market, India itself is growing at 12%. It's an unleveraged business. Okay, and all the accounting and the marketing jargons which they had used is out of the way. So I think, keeping regulatory issues aside, this company today is undervalued. It's a large pharma company. It has immense capabilities in immense therapeutic areas. It could be a winner. Let's talk about, let's say, Dr. Reddy's. They now have a change of guard at the helm of affairs. Eris Israeli has come from Teva, and Teva, has been a generics champion, so to speak. The strategy for the company has now changed slightly to making money, and that making money opportunity comes from generic sales to the US. So from focusing on developing new molecules or new chemical entities, NCEs as they were called, the focus now is to market and sell generic products, generic medicines, difficult generic medicines, so that they can have a better market share and a better pricing. All this with the minimum amount of capex. Even if they are developing new molecules, they are not wanting to continue it till the end. They have completed some portion of those ongoing work, and then they have looking to monetize out those products before fully encashing the pluses and minuses out of that product. That again is a very good strategy, because it actually takes care of your cash flows and at the same time take care of your growth opportunity. This strategy, by the way, is not followed by a company like, let's say, Glenmark, they have acute, they have chronic, but they are very heavily tilted towards a new chemical entity molecule. For me, a new chemical entity molecule is like a lottery ticket. If you hit that lottery ticket, you make billions and zillions. But if it doesn't translate into anything, either you have to out-license it at a pittance, or the expenditure goes to zero.
Okay.
So that's how the equation works.
All right, so the two stocks that you spoke about that have the potential to be big wealth creators over the next 5 years, Sun Pharma and Dr. Reddy's in the large cap space. We have some queries coming in, so let me take them very quickly. Akshat Kumar joins in with this question. Akshat, go ahead.
My question to you is, with the pharma stocks nearly near their 52 weeks high, do you really feel that now is the right time to invest in them to get a better return on the stock, on the portfolio?
Okay, so that's a fair question, right? I mean, this seems to be a bit of a crowded trade at the moment. Many of these stocks at 52-week highs. Does it still make sense to invest? Manish, go ahead.
Sonia, when something becomes a crowded trade, the outlook on that trade is totally different from the outlook of what the pharma sector today looks like. First of all, the capital of pharma companies are quite small. So there are very large number of holders who are holders for a very long time, and they don't want to sell the shares. Secondly, when a bull market in any particular sector starts, it always starts with this fact, have we missed the bus? But the fact remains that the growth, in spite of disbelief, and this has happened with me as well. You know, specialty chemicals I thought was a commodity product. Look at the longevity of growth that has come for the specialty chemicals per se. So one needs to understand that according to me, after this pandemic, there have been certain changes which changes the perception of the human mind, and healthcare will get more importance, which will mean that you have to consume more medicines, and increasing volumes with increasing prices gives you better profits, and when the profits move up, you have a PE multiple re-rating. Mostly all the pharma companies are trading at 1/3 the valuations. I'm talking about the large pharma companies. 1/3 the valuations of what they were trading when they were at their peak 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Okay.
So I think the size of the opportunity is only going to get bigger. It's just pick and choose the right stocks within your portfolio, and things should be fine.
All right, so the size of the opportunity in the pharmaceutical space is only going to get bigger. We've actually run out of time, but one last question. We generally ask our guests about what their favorite book is. I mean, their overall favorite book, but since we're talking about the pharma sector particularly, what would you recommend for newbies to read to, enhance their knowledge here?
I recently read a book on pharmaceuticals. It's called The End of Medicine, and it's written by Andy Kessler, ANDYKESSLER. If you happen to read these medicines, this book, you will come to a situation where you can envisage a world without medicines. They have talked about a whole lot of things, including your genomic theory, stem cell theory, what is getting done, the diagnostic tests which are getting done will not get done, and so on and so forth. So this book, according to me, gives me a better perception about the entire pharmaceutical space as it appears now and within the next maybe 15-20 years.
Okay, well, we could have gone on for a goodish bit, but we have unfortunately run out of time. Manish, thank you so much for talking about the pharmaceutical space, enlightening us with your thoughts, your book recommendations, and answering all of our queries. With that, it is a wrap on another edition of Smart Money, but keep sending in your queries. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back again next week.